world's writers will walk through those gates. And if you hang around, you get a chance to talk to them.
I'm interested in conversations that deal with things that matter, but real, how do we live our lives?
First of all, make climate change personal in your life. The second step is get angry and get active. And the third step, and believe it or not, I think this is the most important. We have to imagine this world that we want to hurry towards.
It's about kindness is looking at people as people and not as I voted this, I do this, whatever it is. There's some people we will never get along with, but most of us are a complex mass of different things.
Hello, I'm Julia Donaldson. Some of you might know me from some of the books I've written, such as The Gruffalo or What the Ladybird Heard. Well, one of the things that I really love normally about coming to the Edinburgh International Book Festival is meeting children who love to read and bringing my stories to life for them on the stage. This year, of course, none of the authors or illustrators can do that. But I am delighted that this year's online book festival is available and free to so many children in so many different places. So I hope that anyone watching has a wonderful time and that it makes you want to read lots and lots of books.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Edinburgh International Book Festival, coming to you online for the first time. My name is Beth. I use she, her pronouns, and it is my great pleasure to be here today to chair the Representation Matters event with Hannah Lee and Jessica Love, and that's brought to you by Bailey Gifford. And they've just popped up in the corner, so if we can give them a wave. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
And we've
Hello.
We've also got Jo in the background who will be interpreting this event into British Sign Language for anyone who needs it or would like to see it. And you can do that just by clicking the British Sign Language button on the broadcast. You may have noticed that we're doing things slightly differently this year, mainly because we're not all intense cowering from the rain. And although I'm a bit gutted that we're not in Charlotte Square this year, what it does mean is that we've got the opportunity to reach far more people all the way across the country, and in fact, across the world as well. So it really doesn't matter where you are, you can join us today. And I hope for some of you, this is actually your first time seeing the Edinburgh International Book Festival. So wherever you are, I hope you're sitting comfortably and have a nice cup of tea with you as well. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our authors properly, but first, I just wanted to tell you how you can get engaged with this event as well, because that's the other benefit of doing this online. So there's a couple of ways you can interact with us today. You can chat with the audience, so you can share your thoughts, you can share your experiences as well. If something chimes with you that an author says, you can tell us where you are. The other thing you can do that I would really recommend is that you can send questions in for Hannah and Jessica. So please do that, because the last 15 minutes of the event, I'm going to pass over to you for your questions. You can also buy copies of both Jessica and Hannah's books in the link below the video as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Hannah and Jessica. And we're going to start with Hannah. So Hannah won the Faber and Andlin BAME Prize last year, also known as the FAB Prize, which is really good. And that is set up to discover new and talented Black and minority ethnic authors. And hopefully lead them towards finding representation and publishing deals as well. And it clearly worked for Hannah because she's here today to talk about her debut book, My Hair, which you can see just here, which is just a celebration of family, community, and identity. It's so vibrant and it's filled with gorgeous illustrations from Allen Fatimaharan. So we'll have a chance to hear more from Hannah in a second. Hi, Hannah, how are you? Before we
Hello.
And then our second author is Jessica Love. She's another award winner, so you've got 2 award winners for the price of 1 today. And Jessica's debut pitch book, Julian is a Mermaid, which is just here, won the Stonewall Book Award in 2009, along with many, many other accolades. And this is stunningly illustrated by Jessica herself. It's a sensitive and joyful depiction of a young boy discovering who he truly is. So hi, Jessica.
Hello.
So I think you've heard more than enough from me. So what we're going to do to begin is we're going to hand over to each of the authors in turn. They're going to tell us a bit about their book and give us a reading. Afterwards, there'll be a bit of a kind of chaired discussion with myself and the authors. And then the final 15 minutes, it'll be over to you to answer all of your questions as well. So we're going to start with Hannah. Hannah, can you tell us a bit about your book, why you wrote it, why it's important to you, and then if you could read it for us as well, that'd be brilliant.
Oh, fab. Okay, so my name is Hannah Lee. This is My Hair, written by me and illustrated by Allen Fatimaharan. The reason why I wrote My Hair was actually for my nephew, because at the time that he was born, we'd read together a lot as he was growing up. And then I kind of realized, like, where are all the books with, like, the kids that look like him or that reflect our household? And there weren't loads, or if they were there, you'd have to like hunt like a lot just to find them. And I was like, well, that's not right. And it reminded me that, like, of my childhood, that I just hadn't had much books growing up that reflected me. So that's really where the idea to turn My Hair into a children's book came from, because it was originally a poem. And so, yeah, My Hair is about a little girl who is just really like looking for the best hair to wear for her birthday that's coming up. And so she just goes through all the people around her and their hairstyles and their personalities and different stuff about them. And then it helps her in the end in her decision in what she wears for her birthday party.
Would you like to read that for us just now?
I would. I'm trying to figure out the best way. Oh, great. So this is My Hair by me and illustrated by Allen Fatimaharan. Oh. Gonna put a little bit. Can everyone see it? I don't know if I'm seeing. Oh, there we go.
That works.
Hey, my birthday is coming up so soon. I'll need new clothes to wear. But most of all, I need to know, how shall I style my hair? Let me do your hair, jokes Daddy. I'm getting better, I swear. Mummy rushes in the room. Daddy, don't you dare. Off we go to the hairdressers to get it done professionally. As for what style I choose, you'll have to wait and see. Here's everyone's favorite dog, by the way. Everyone loves this dog every time this book comes up. Miss Dawn has lots of magazines just so you can get a clue of the kind of hairstyle that you would like to do. Whilst I'm looking through them, my imagination starts to grow. I start to think of all the hairstyles I already know. Mummy has the most dazzling dreadlocks. Such a joy to see them swing. I like to practice plaiting them. It is my favorite thing. My sister likes to experiment. There's not a look that she won't try. Bantu knots, a high top fade, braids, she's not shy. My brothers both have cornrows with different shapes, patterns, and lines. They love to show them off at school, yelling, "Come see the best designs." Daddy says, "Shave all over, please," when he sits in the barber's chair. His beard is shiny, curly, and full. That's where he likes his hair. Uncle has waves that are so smooth, swirling all over his head. He keeps his hair brushed and neat. Don't forget the do-rag before bed. Auntie's hair is shaved real short, much like the head of a lioness. She is so cool, stylish, and carefree. That's how she likes it best. Baby cousin is so small, she hasn't much hair yet. Already it's begun to grow. She'll have loads soon, you can bet. Grandma's hair is short and cropped. There are many curls of grey. She says she found one years ago and invited them all to stay. Grandpa wears turbans, tie heads and scarves, his hair tucked away from his face. For Grandpa has so much hair, that's how he keeps it in place. Time to take a look at my friends and what styles they wear. After all, I still don't know how I'll style my hair. Ryan will have plaits with bows. Her mummy can do them fast. Put a bonnet on, she says, to make the style last. Michael has a mohawk. Brandon is short back and sides. They go to the barbers together and chat while the cutter glides. Nina is my best friend. What style? She asks with a pout. I want to try something new. Maybe a twist out? It's been 45 minutes, cries Miss Dawn. What will you do with your hair? Time to let Mummy decide. Don't you think that's fair? So Mummy whispers in my ear, and that's exactly what I know. The hairstyle that I will wear will be my...
Oh no. I think we've lost Hannah there. Unfortunately, she's been having a couple of technical issues. So we'll get that sorted just now. That word was Afro. There was about 3 lines left of the picture book, unfortunately. I think the best thing to do would be to move on and speak to Jessica just now, and hopefully we'll be able to get Hannah back in a second. So Jessica, could you tell us about your book and give us a reading as well?
That was gutting to lose Hannah at the climax of the story. All right, well, I'll just sort of vamp for a little bit in case Hannah comes back shortly so that she can finish her story. But this is my book. Julian is a mermaid. And I made this picture book sort of as a passion project. I consider myself mainly an illustrator, more I think than a writer. And I conceived it almost as a wordless picture book and worked on it over the course of probably 5 years while I was working as a theater actor, like a jobbing regional theater actor. And this book had many sources of inspiration, but just to name a few, when I was working on this book, I started dating a man who he was from a mixed race family, and his older brother is a trans man, and he had transitioned kind of recently. And so I was getting to know this family during a time when they were having all these conversations about gender and trying to figure out how to sort of explain their uncle's transition to the little kids in the family. And I've always been interested in and skeptical of traditional gender roles. And at the time I was also watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race. I was extremely inspired by by the film Paris is Burning, which is about the ball circuit in New York in the 1980s. And some of the performers who are interviewed in that documentary have these really painful stories about being pushed out of their homes and rejected by their birth families because of who they are. And then they find their new families in these voguing houses. Anyway, these are some of the many sources of inspiration for this story. But I'll just read it and you can see for yourself. Okay. Julian is a mermaid, or in the US version, it's Julian is a mermaid, written and illustrated by me. So we begin at a swimming pool, at a water aerobics class, where all good stories begin. And as we leave the YMCA and go to get on the subway, we notice that our hero and his grandmother are being followed by 3 beautiful women. And this book is dedicated to Nana. This is a boy named Julian, and this is his Nana. And those are some mermaids. Julian loves mermaids. And as he stares at the beautiful mermaids, the train begins to fill with water. And his hair begins to grow. And a swirl of fish, every color of the rainbow, whooshes around Julian's body, transforming him into a mermaid. And his tail is lilac and marigold colored. And a big, beautiful skyfish swims towards him with a necklace in its mouth for Julian when... Let's go, honey. This is our stop. And they get off the train. And they wave goodbye to the mermaids. And they start walking through the neighborhood. And Julian says, Nana, did you see the mermaids? And Nana says, I saw them, honey. And Julian says, Nana, I am also a mermaid. And they go inside her apartment. And she says, I'm going to take a bath. You be good. Do you think he will? Julian has a good idea. And he kicks off his shoes. And he takes off his shirt. And he takes off his shorts. And he pulls the fronds out of his Nana's fern. And he makes a crown for himself, and he puts on lipstick, and he decorates the crown with flowers. And then he sees her lacy curtain blowing in the wind, and he thinks, I know exactly what to do with that. And he pulls it down and makes for himself a mermaid tail. And he is fabulous. Oh, she's back. Uh-oh, he in trouble? He did make a big mess. And he pulled down her curtain and he used her lipstick. But she's back. And she's holding something behind her back. And she says, "Come here, honey." And she gives him a beautiful coral necklace. And he says, "For me, Nana?" And she says, "For you, Julian." And then they go outside. And Julian says, "Where are we going?" And Nana says, "You'll see." "Mermaids," whispers Julian. "Like you, honey. Let's join them." And they do. And that is the end of the story. And now everyone's a mermaid. The end. And Hannah's back, so we can go back to her and she can finish her book because we stopped at the climax.
I know. I was trying to get back. Sorry about that, guys. My computer has been suddenly temperamental today for the first time ever. Like it's never done this.
Yep.
No problem. But then it's just suddenly like, I know, I'm going to act up. So sorry, guys, I'm back. Will be my
Yeah, do you want to finish your story and then we can talk to both of you after?
Yes, I'd love to.
Have you back.
I love my afro when it's out. So big and great and free. My daddy says it is my crown. It defies gravity, a creation to which none could compare. I'm so glad it's mine. I love my... Ah! Bit of audience participation there.
I'm sure everyone joined in with that at home. Can I just say that was such a joy to listen to you both tell your stories, and you both tell them so differently as well. Like Hannah, that was just bubbling with the energy that's all the way through your book, and Jessica, that was just such a mesmerizing reading, and you could really see kind of like the pictureless, the wordlessness of the picture book, and it was just such a joy to listen to. So thank you both for sharing. I'm sorry we had that technical issue.
I'm so sorry.
All the gremlins have been used now, so from now on it's plain sailing. So our event today is it's all about representation and kind of whether it matters. Is it important for young children to see themselves in the books that they read? And one of the reasons we're talking about this is that a recent study showed that only 1% of children's books feature a main protagonist who is a Black or minority ethnic background. And I actually read an article by Hannah recently that said that as a young Black child, you are more likely to read a book about an alien or a talking truck than about children who look and feel like you do. So we're going to be asking some quite big, meaty questions today about, whether this is a problem, and if it is, spoiler alert, I think it is, then how should we address it? So I kind of wanted to kick off with the first question being what does representation mean to you? And if we let's go to Hannah first. Let's not go to Hannah first because I think she's frozen. Let's go to Jessica.
No, gremlins are back. So I think for me, representation is the experience of recognizing yourself or somebody that you know on the page. And it comes from, I think, the very simplest, most basic human need to be seen. Because I think there's something reciprocal about being seen and being made real by knowing that you're real to other people. And I think without without seeing yourself reflected in the imaginary world, I think it's very insidious the way that can undermine your sense of being real in the real world. I think especially for kids, we live more in our imaginary worlds than in the real world anyway, and to have your real world be diverse and full of people who look like you, and then have the world of books be this completely alien landscape just full of skinny white girls, of course that's going to mess with your head. Of course it's a broken system. It's super broken. Yeah. Hannah's back.
Would you?
I'm back.
Would you agree with that, Hannah? That seeing,
yes,
being made real by being seen.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. I think when you, I literally cut off just before your question because technical issues, but I'm back now on a new device. I love that for us. So I think, what was your question?
It was, what does representation mean to you?
Oh, fab. Representation, I'd agree with Jessica. Representation means being seen. And it's also just like having your reality reflected. I think a major thing that is left out a lot of the time when people talk about representation is erasure. And it's like, we don't like to talk about erasure because it feels very violent and stuff like that. But it's like, it is violent. Like if I can't see myself, it feels like an attack on me. It feels like someone is purposely doing it because there are thousands of books, thousands of TV shows, thousands of movies, films, whatever it have you. The media's out there, but the gatekeepers don't necessarily look like me and might not necessarily find my story or what I have to say. Or if I have a protagonist that's Black, they might not be like interested in that story. Oh, who is it going to appeal to? I don't know, someone, but you can find someone for it. And that's the thing with representation. When you're represented, it does something to your soul. Someone recognizes you, someone sees you, someone speaks directly to you and also speaks to others and says that person exists because you know you exist. But there are people who might walk past you and not see you as a complete person because they don't have an idea of what you think or what you feel as like a fictional character. And that's what we do sometimes. We link that to fictional characters. Like people look at Harry Potter, for example, and like, oh, they feel something with that character enough to get a tattoo of that character or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing, like just being recognized and knowing that you exist through other people's experiences. And were you able to see that yourself when you were a child? Did you find those books where you felt represented, or were they just missing?
For me as a child, I remember that in our school library, that was the main place where you would go to get books, is the school library, especially when you're a super young child. Before the actual library, you would go to the school library. The two books that we had that had any kind of Black girl representation in them were Handa's Surprise and the Amazing Grace books. And those were like the only books that we had. And everything else was like white kids or talking trucks and aliens. Like there wasn't any, like that was where you would go as a Black girl to see that. You would just go to those books. And it's like, you could ask any other Black girl who grew up of a certain age, oh, what books? And they're going to be like Amazing Grace and Handa's Surprise. They're going to say those books because those were like the consistent ones for years. They were just the consistent books that we had.
Yeah. How about you, Jessica? Could you see yourself in books when you were growing up, just to get the kind of the opposite of you?
Yeah, I was everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I think the characters I identified with actually were usually the boys, which is a whole other kettle of fish about the way that girls are generally represented as princesses. I was more of a Peter Pan type of a girl, more of a Christopher Robin, Sam Gamgee. These were my people, but I saw people that looked like me everywhere. Yeah. It's funny, what you were saying, Hannah, reminded me of this conversation that I had with my best friend when I was probably like 11 or something. My my best friend growing up was named Leila Kabugos, and she was half Filipina and half German. And she was this brilliant weirdo with enormous brown eyes. And she wanted to grow up to be an ethnobotanist. And during middle school, we were inseparable and both very into fantasy. We were both extremely into the Lord of the Rings. And I remember I was like drawing both of us as elves, naturally. And we started talking about, I think the conversation was something like, what do you look like in your own imagination? And I looked pretty much like myself, except I had red hair. But Layla didn't. Layla, instead of being like short Filipina dark hair, she was a tall, willowy, I think blonde, but I can't remember, elf. And it was the first time I'd really thought about what a strange and disorienting experience it must be to have even your own conception of your inner life not match up with what you looked like, and how squared up that experience is. And like, it's just really messed up because Layla actually was the one who could speak more Elvish than I could. But all the elves in Tolkien are like tall and long blonde hair and gray eyes, blue eyes, eyes pale as the sea. Like, it's all this subtle signaling, even in a book that doesn't have pictures, that's telling you who you're supposed to look up to. It's so messed up.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because in fantasy, like you have these authors who you're like, okay, so you can imagine like a 6-foot dragon, you can imagine a giant, you can imagine a 3-eyed, whatever it is. And then it's like, a black, whoa, whoo. Guys, you're getting outside the box now, man. You're thinking outside the box. Even like in Game of Thrones, like I love Game of Thrones, but I was like, okay, it's kind of spot the black person in this one, but it was really that.
And that's a recent example as well. Like Game of Thrones doesn't have that, you know, we can't say, oh, well, that
like 3 or 4.
Historical,
like
Hello.
And I mean, I think in like Lord of the Rings as well, like he couldn't come up with more than 2 names that sounded different. So, you know, it's kind of course they all look the same because women are kind of all interchangeable in those books anyway. Sorry, a bit off topic there. But I think it's quite interesting what you were saying there about, you know, even within those depictions of like white young girls, there is that kind of homogeneity. That's not a word.
It's fine to make it up. Shakespeare did it all the time.
It's a word now, homogeneity. There's that sameness there as well. You know, you mentioned that kind of princess trope and identifying more with the men. And, you know, there is that thing of, you know, there's nuclear families, there's not much LGBT representation, there's princesses, there's adventurous boys. So in those contexts, how important do you think the books that you've both written, so, you know, My Hair is obviously about a young black girl celebrating her community and celebrating her culture, and Julian is obviously a young boy who's kind of asking those questions about gender identity, and doesn't have that nuclear family around him necessarily. How important are your books in that context, do you think? We'll start with Hannah.
How important is My Hair in the context of representation?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fab. I feel like, as I've said before, it's really, for me, it was about reflecting a reality, just something that just is. And so when I wrote the book, it was originally a poem, as I said, and it was something that was my reality at the time, was losing my hair. And so I really wanted to just celebrate it. And I hadn't noticed, so after My Hair was published, a teacher messaged me on Twitter and was like, oh, what I really like about My Hair is that she's just celebrating. You've not necessarily attached a trauma to her hair, which is what she's just celebrating. And I'd never seen it like that before, but she was like how it was difficult for her as a teacher to have loads of books about Black hair and for there to always be trauma there. And for me, it was like growing up, it wasn't a case of I saw my hair as a traumatic thing or a bad thing. And I think subconsciously, I just didn't translate that, put that message in there. Of course, there's people who grow up and they have they want to be different. They want their hair to be different. As Jessica said, they want to reflect the images that they're seeing all the time or that are being praised all the time. But I really wanted to get to the heart of celebration and to just drive home, it's your hair. Like, and I want you to love it because it's yours. I don't want you to hate it. So I didn't want to speak about you even. I didn't even want to consider you hating it because why would you hate it? I just wanted you to just love it because I love mine and I love yours. So I just wanted you to love it as a child. So I think that's why my hair's important in that respect. It's a celebration. Yeah.
And I think that's actually something that both of your books have so much in common, that it's just about a celebration of that identity. It's not about, like you say, there is no trauma in there, because why would there be trauma? It's about her hair. And you know, with Julian as well, like there's no trauma there. He's just exploring himself, and it's a joyful experience. And yeah, Jessica, same question to you. Why do you think that's important to have that celebrated and not have that trauma kind of in the center of it?
I love what Hannah said. I kind of feel the same way. Like when there are only a tiny handful of books representing like diverse populations or minorities, which like also like, guess what? Brown-skinned people are the global majority. So like maybe it's time to re-examine some of these terms. But when there are only a handful of these books, I feel like so often, like Hannah was saying, they are about pointing up this difference, and they are centered around the trauma of this difference. And I think in some ways they introduce this concept of, oh, this thing about me that is different from some other kids in my class is something to be ashamed of, is something to be worried about. And I like.
Oh, we seem to have lost.
Didn't want.
Carry on. Oh. Sorry, we lost your sound for a second. Carry on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Now.
Okay. I wanted to be really vigilant about not introducing the idea in this book that anything that this kid is doing is problematic, that I wanted it to just feel like a party, just a place to go and feel joy. And I feel like that's what Hannah's book does too. And it seems to me that the more books like this that get published, the less there will be this onus on the few that are out there to like account for the whole experience.
Yeah.
And like there can be more books where it's like it's not about difference. This is just these characters and this is their lives, and you know, like the way it is for 99% of the books about straight white kids.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. While it is such a small part of the industry, there is that tendency to feel like this book has to do X, Y, and Z more than a book about, you know, a little girl being a princess needs to as well. And I think with that in mind, that kind of brings us on to a question about, do you think it's possible, and should writers be writing kind of outside of their experience necessarily in order to get that kind of that mainstream up? You know, does it matter if you're writing outside of your experience? And I wanted to start with you there, Jessica, because I know that when you were writing Julian, you were thinking about that quite a lot. I was reading on your website, and you wanted to make sure those portrayals were sensitive and fully realized. And yeah, what's your opinion on kind of writing outside of your experience?
Okay, so obviously we can write outside of our experience, whether we should or not is, I think it's a complicated question. And I think, so I want to talk about own voices for a second. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term, it started as a hashtag by the writer Corinne, I think her last name is pronounced Davis, but I'm not totally sure. Anyway, it refers to when an author from a marginalized or underrepresented in the publishing industry group is writing about their own experiences from their own perspective, rather than someone from outside of that group writing that character. And when you look at the statistics, so obviously we need more diversity in the books that are being published, and that has been slowly changing over the last 7 years. But when you look at the books that do feature Black characters, Latinx characters, queer characters, the majority of the books that are being published are still being written by folks from outside of that group, that's what my book is. My book isn't an own voices group. And so I think we need equity in publishing on both fronts. We need the outward facing books that are available to kids to offer a much greater range of diverse characters, but we also need to get the door way wider open for authors and illustrators who are trying to break into the industry and historically have a way more difficult time trying to sell their work and get in the door. So those are like the structural, systemic changes that I think need to be addressed throughout the publishing industry. But in terms of individual writers writing outside their experience, I don't know if I can say what any individual author should or shouldn't be doing. I will say that historically there have been many cases where people writing outside of their experience get it really wrong and perpetuate harmful, racist, homophobic, whatever, these stereotypes that are, you write the book from a good place, but because it isn't the world that you grew up living and breathing, and you get some stuff wrong, it can do real harm. So I think when you're approaching writing outside of your experience, there is a much greater responsibility not to get up and to, I could go on and on about like the research I did and the people I talked to and what my financial accountability practices are with the money that comes in from the book. But I think ultimately the question comes down to, for me, who is this book for? Do you know who you are making this for? And for me, that was very, very clear. And I was holding this picture of all the Julians of the world, the little ones, the ones who are grown up now, the ones who've passed on. This book was for them, and not in a savey way, not in a more in a tribute way, more in a I wasn't trying to teach anybody a lesson. I was just really trying to say, you've made the world more beautiful by being yourself, and I'm grateful for it. And I see you, and there's a whole family of people who can't wait to meet you. and throw you a party. But I think constantly asking yourself the question, is this good enough for the people I'm making this book for, and envisioning them reading it and imagining how they'll feel when they're reading it, and are they seeing themselves on the page? I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind, because that's who it's for.
Yeah, and I think from my experience, I work for an LGBT charity, and we know from young people talking to us that is what that book is for them. Like it is such a powerful thing, because they're seeing that kind of that celebration and that acceptance of Julian and his identity, and that's, we've had quite a few young people really respond to that book. So in that respect, that's exactly what it's been doing. So I think that's something to be so proud and happy about. We need to move on to questions from the audience, actually. But before we did, what I wanted to ask you both is kind of just thinking about the other kind of brilliant books that are out there for young people just now, and thinking about, which books do you wish existed when you were younger, that are out there that you can kind of show people the direction of. Start with Hannah.
So there is a book called, all of them are on my phone. Can you start with Jessica? Because I have all my list, but the list is on my phone, and I'm on my phone right now. So I'm going to just get my list up.
Do you want me to vamp for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When you're ready, just shout out. I really, really love Oge Mora's books. Her first book, Thank You, Omu, and her second book, Saturday, are fantastic. She's an author illustrator. She also illustrates other people's books. But she works in a multimedia collage style, and her composition is so thoughtful and vibrant, and it's high art stuff for kids. She's a total genius and a big source of inspiration for me. I love all of Yuyi Morales's books. They're so beautifully illustrated, and there's so much heart in them. I think Dreamers in particular is super important because it's so personal. It really feels like she's just whispering the story in your ear. I love The Stuff of Stars by Marion Dane Bauer, illustrated by Ekua Holmes, who's just a completely incredible artist. She marbled her own paper for this story, and it's about the birth of the universe. And I think as an anxious kid, it would have assuaged many of my late night infinity anxieties. Anything by that Kadir Nelson has illustrated, especially The Undefeated by Kwame Alexander, which is just this epic, incredible poem. Anything by John Steptoe. And then lastly, there's this new book out called The Hips on the Drag Queen Go Swish, Swish, Swish by Lil Miss Hot Mess, illustrated by Olga de Dios. And it's published actually by Drag Queen Story Hour, which I think started in the US, but I think you have it in the UK as well now. And then lastly, I'll do a really quick shout out. This is a book that has not yet been published, but this author is trying to get, I think she's still got a fundraiser going. The book is titled The Alphabet of Enchantment Island by Yahaira de la Espada. And it's a bilingual children's picture book. It's an alphabet book about Puerto Rican culture and African diasporic heritage, and imagining a world where the American territories are free and sovereign. And she's a writer and an educator, and she's been trying to get this book published for a long time and has had a hard time breaking into the publishing industry. So I urge you to Google it, Alphabet of Enchantment Island. And if you want to contribute to her GoFundMe, I think this book should be out there for people to buy. Okay, that's it, I'm done.
Oh, fab. Okay, I remember they were in my head, but I wanted to make sure I had all the authors and illustrators' names out there. So Sheree Miller, Don't Touch My Hair, she illustrated and wrote this book. I think it's really, really great for kids to like learn about boundaries and just like personal boundaries, etc. And it's quite a fun tale. It's literally a little girl and she's like running away from people trying to touch her hair. So sometimes she's like, oh, I'm going to swim in the ocean just so people don't touch my hair. I've climbed to the top of a tower, but people are still touching my hair. Like, so it's like a nice book about like boundaries. There's also Tallulah, the Tooth Fairy's CEO, which is just really, really funny. And that is by Dr. Tamara Pizzoli and Federico Fabiani. And it's just really hilarious. It's literally a Tooth Fairy CEO. It is what she says, it does what it says on the tin. And she just has like, she's really successful. And then there's suddenly like a spanner in the works with someone that's like, she's never had this case before and she now suddenly has to like figure it out. It's really, really stylishly done. It's actually just genuinely hilarious. I would also say Bunmi Laditan, The Big Bed, which is illustrated by Tom Knight, is also a really funny book. And it's a little girl and she's trying to negotiate with her parents to have their bed instead of hers. So that's just really, really hilarious. And I know she also runs a blog called The Honest Toddler. And also any book by Jason Reynolds, particularly Long Way Down, that just, like, that had me in tears. And I think the verse of it is so gorgeous. Like, it's just, the writing is just lush. It is just chef's kiss. And also High Rise Mystery by, it's a round table book. Shana, it is by
Candice Gawley, is it? No.
I know, it's by Shana Jackson. High Rise Mystery by Shana Jackson. Shana, sorry, my head is everywhere. It's High Rise Mystery by Shana Jackson, and it's a mystery. It's a mystery book with two Black girls at the center of it, and yeah, it's really, really cool. It's really fab. And then I also asked my niece and nephew for a recommendation, and they said Clean Up. This is their favorite book at the moment. So this is like their recommendation. And then my sister's recommendation as a mum, as you can see, the cover's gone, but it is
Oh, yes.
A Twist Scientist by,
So
sorry, I
good.
didn't even say, guys, this is by Nathan Bryan and Dapo Adiola. Getting excited there. This is by, and then A Twist Scientist is by Andrea Beatty and David Roberts, but the cover's gone, but because they got really excited with it. So those are my recommendations.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing those. And I hope people kind of watch this back and write those down and go out and kind of get them. We've got slightly less time for questions than we'd planned, but hopefully we can rattle through a few of these.
Yes.
So if we can kind of keep our answers short and snippy, and then we can get through as many as we can. So the first one that's come in is kind of all around illustration for both of you. So it starts by saying, Jessica, as an author and illustrator, how does the process work for you? Do you see the pictures before the text or vice versa? And then Hannah asks you about the process of seeing Alan's illustrations come out. Did the pictures match what you had in your head? So Jessica, pictures or words first?
Pictures first. I put the words in like the last week. I work on the pictures for like years, and then I'm sort of telling myself the story in my head as I go, but it's very pictures first. My Julian as a Mermaid was wordless until like a week before we went to publication, and I realized I'd never told my editor that I planned on putting text in, and so she was like, oh, okay, I guess we need to get that text to the printer a month ago, but we got the words in at the end. Yeah, I draw, and then finally figure out what the words are.
Perfect. And Hannah, how did you find the process of seeing Alan illustrating your words? Did they match what was in your?
Oh, yes. Alan's great. So Alan is really very much, as most illustrators do as well, just pull it from your head. I don't know if most illustrators do that actually, but he's really good with that. But I know that he went out and we had such a massive conversation. So picture books are obviously a collaboration period between the author and the illustrator, unless you do both, like Jessica, for example. So for me, we would collaborate, like I'd send him references, he'd send me stuff. And a lot of it is really just his world building with like a couple references from me, from what I would be like, oh, I really would like to see this, etc. But the majority of it is his world building.
Perfect. The next question, actually, this. Yep,
Sorry.
go for it.
I've heard that's actually quite unusual, getting to collaborate with your illustrator in that way. And I didn't realize this, but I've heard that quite often you don't even meet your illustrator or like
That's what
get to
I
have.
heard.
Isn't that crazy
And I was like, but
I don't know how you
trust
do it
him.
without.
That's
Or her.
Totally.
I think, yeah, that you never get to see your illustrator. You just kind of get them delivered. Yeah.
Get them to... Nah, he came up on the train. He was out here doing like field assignments and stuff. He's like, but he's very hands-on. We're both quite hands-on with each other. So
Yeah.
that was nice.
And I should say, actually, Allen Fatimaharan is doing quite a few events as part of the online Edinburgh International Book Festival this year. So he's already done some that you can catch up on, and I think he's got some more coming out. So you should check that out.
He's 26. I might be making that date up, but he has got one. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. We've got two questions that are quite similar here around the issue of tokenism. So the first one is, how much of an issue do you think tokenism is, especially when masquerading as representation? And the other is, do you think that publishers with LGBTQ+ and BAME characters are doing that solely to kind of check boxes rather than kind of normalize the inclusion of the characters? So if we look at the issue of tokenism, what are your thoughts on tokenism, if we start with Jessica again?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question?
Yeah, I was going to ask as well.
That was a lot of words all at once. How much of an issue do you think tokenism is, especially when masquerading as representation?
Right. I think I remember you mentioned the controversy with Disney's new film coming out. Maybe it's Pixar.
Yeah.
Where
Onwards.
they're like
Onwards,
right? Where they're finally featuring a queer character, and I think Lena Waithe is voicing her. Anyway, but that I've read that like I haven't seen the film, but people are upset because it's sort of a throwaway line where she like references that she has a girlfriend, but you don't actually spend any time in this family, and you're not. It's not like we have them in the center of the story. And I think the question to be asked is like, are these characters sort of filling in the margins of the picture to be like, we have a Black person and a disabled person and a queer person, and that's it, we did it, we're not in trouble. Like, is it that kind of work, or are these people at the center of their own story? And like, I don't know, with the Disney thing, it's so frustrating because like they do have all of these characters that are coded as queer, but they're all villains. They're still my favorite characters. I'll take Ursula over Ariel any day. But I think until we're seeing these stories where these characters aren't the best friend, but are the main character, aren't like populating the sides of the frame, but are in the center of the frame, then that's probably an issue of tokenism. Like, why can't the main character be Black and queer? Let's do it. Let's go. It's 2020.
And I think that audiences can decipher that as well, really easy. Audiences can just like smell BS. Like I can tell, because usually when we're relegated to the sidelines, it's in a stereotype. So it's the sassy Black friend, it's the therapist who's like an older Black woman, it's the Black man playing a really good cop, for example, but he doesn't really do much else, but just, be the chief. Hey, chief, that's his thing, so we can already tell when something isn't genuine and we just don't support it. And I think now that we have like stuff like trailers, previews, reviews, etc., like that are coming out before films. We just kind of know which ones not to support. So I'm just not going to give it my money.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful way to do it, is to kind of vote with your feet or vote with your money.
Yeah, I'm just not going to give it my time, my attention, or my money. Like, I've seen films when I was younger and I was starved of seeing myself. I had to watch those films. But now I'm like, people are writing stuff, people are indie authors, people are indie filmmakers. I'm going to go watch something from them and support them if they're doing the actual work that it takes to center me.
I'm really sorry, we've actually run out of time and gone a bit over, so I'm sorry, everyone. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us today. A special thank you to Hannah Lee and Jessica Love for sharing their books and also such passionate discussion and really engaging with this topic. Thank you as well for all the questions we didn't get to. I know that we could have gone on for probably double the time, maybe triple the time. So sorry if we didn't get to you. Please remember that you can buy one of Jessica or Hannah's books by clicking on the link at the bottom to visit the online bookshop. And also just a shout out to all the sponsors and donors who made today happen, made these events free to watch. If you would like to and are able to, you can donate to support the work of the Edinburgh International Book Festival, also through the link below. But before we go, I just wanted to say another massive thank you. It feels weird not to be giving you a round of applause, but that's where we are.
Do this.
Do this. Thank you so much, Jessica and Hannah.
Thank you very much, Beth, for sharing.